to see this many people with us today, and we appreciate your coming. This afternoon marks our fifth and final forum as the EMCC Board of Trustees nears the selection of our next president. Thank you for coming today and participating in this very important process. Today we welcome Dr. Thomas Huebner, who most recently served as president of East Mississippi Community College for the past 3 years. Previous to that, Dr. Huebner held senior administrative positions at Shelton State Community College, Logan State University, and Carson Newman University, as well as Bevel State Community College, where he served as interim president. Dr. Huebner holds bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees in communications from Southwest Baptist University, the University of Georgia, and the University of Southern Mississippi, respectively. He's here today to share with you about his experiences and philosophies and answer any questions you may have. Please help me welcome to MCC today, Dr. Tom Huebner.
What a privilege it is for me to be here, to be able to answer some questions, tell you a little bit about myself. What a good crowd, and there are a lot of familiar faces, and so I'm very proud and privileged to be here. But first, before I go any further, let me introduce to you someone who is very important. My bride. Yesterday was our anniversary, and I got to spend it studying at the house, and she got to spend it running around Meridian with the kids. So my wife, Mindy, she's a Wayne County native and a graduate of Jones Junior College. And so I'm really proud to be here. Thank you. Let me spend just a few minutes telling you a little bit about myself and how I got here today. I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, and went to a little Baptist college near Bolivar, Missouri called Southwest Baptist University. I went there on a speech and debate scholarship and I really had a great time there. And then from there I decided that I wanted to teach, and I wanted to teach at the college level. So I ended up going to the University of Georgia, where I got my master's degree in communication studies. And then from there I got to go back to my alma mater as a professor there, and I was an instructor, professor in the Department of Communication Studies, and was the assistant director of speech and debate for 4 years. Then I knew I needed to do the PhD if I was going to stay in this business called higher education. And so I looked around and ended up deciding that I was going to go to the University of Southern Mississippi and study communication there. And I had the opportunity also to teach full-time at William Carey, which was William Carey College. And I was there for about a decade, and I was fortunate they were able to pay for my degree. And in addition to paying for my degree, I got to teach, and I got a full-time salary, which back in that day was not a lot, but it's not a lot today either. But it's something I was very privileged to be able to have that opportunity. Was there for about 10 years, and then I took a teaching position. Well, I moved into administration for about a 3-year period at William Carey, and when I did, I loved the work, enjoyed the work. I moved into the area of enrollment admissions specifically, and then loved and enjoyed that work, but I missed the classroom, and I missed what happened and the level of influence one could have in the classroom as a professor, and I really longed for that at that particular time, and I don't know why, but moving from the classroom to administration that first time, it was a shock to me, because that opportunity to have influence on the lives of students was not the same as an administrator, and so I had to kind of adjust my mind for what that meant. So I went back to the classroom for a couple of years, I think maybe 2 or 3, before I took a teaching position at Carson Newman, Tennessee. Was there for a number of years, and after the first year, they were looking for a dean of admissions, and the president of that university came to me and said, "We'd really like you to serve in that capacity." Well, thought about it, prayed hard about it, and decided that that was something that I was willing to do. But this time I knew what it was going to be like. I was walking in with my eyes wide open about what it would be like to go into administration, and I knew that when I did that, I was going to be in it for keeps. And so decided to accept that position, and shortly after I was called by William Carey. Now this is where the story gets kind of interesting. Well, the president of William Carey at the time was a man named Dr. Larry Kennedy, and he had given me an opportunity to be an administrator many years ago, and he was a good man and a man I loved very dearly, and he had been a mentor for me. And he had discovered that he had Lou Gehrig's disease, and he was going to be kind of looking to put in place some people at Cary that were going to be able to carry the banner for him, and I was one of those. Well, I was supposed to start September 21st, 2005 as the Vice President for Advancement at William Carey. And if anybody remembers what happened at the end of August of 2005, say it, Katrina. So we're sitting there wondering what's going to happen. I'd resigned my job, sold my house, and signed a contract with William Carey. A week after Katrina, Dr. Kennedy called me and he said, "Tom, I don't know what's going to happen to us. You probably ought to try to stay where you are." And I was like, "Well, doggone, Dr. K." I said, "I've already resigned my job." "Oh, shoot," he said. I remember him saying. So I went and approached my president, and he said, "Oh, this is great. You got your old job back." I was very grateful and thankful. We had a lot of success in enrollment management. In fact, we went from 382 students, freshman students, the year before I started. In my last year, we had 537 freshmen. And I always tell people, to put that into perspective, every student at that private university was worth $25,000 a year. Over 4 years, they're worth $100,000, and 10 students then over a 4-year period is $1 million loss. And so we had to work very hard to recruit students. And so being able to go from 382 to 537 was significant. And one day, if we're all just drinking coffee somewhere, I'll tell you about the way we did that. I did it through math, my math instructor friend over here, and in terms of how we made the decisions about who we were going to recruit. I have a background in statistics too, which is, I'm a weird combination of a numbers nerd who likes to talk. And so I got that, and then a few weeks later, the president of Carson Newman decided I should be a vice president. So he made me the VP for enrollment management. So I stayed there a number of years and went through 3 presidents in a year and a half. And I always laugh. I was the junior cabinet member out of 6 for the first president, and a year and a half later I was the senior cabinet member. So it was a real exciting time in my life right then. And I worked for Dr. Randall O'Brien, who was a fantastic and a Mississippi native and a fantastic man, a guy who has degrees from Southwest Mississippi Community College and Yale. So he was a good man for me to be mentored by. And I realized that I needed an opportunity to take a next step. And I got a real attractive offer from an institution in Missouri where my parents live, only minutes from my parents, and decided that I was going to take them up on that. And it was a college that was looking to become a university. Well, I realized shortly after I got there that was a very, very difficult environment. And so I said, for reasons that have been chronicled in national publications, and I was like not going to be a part of it. So I ended up calling a friend of mine I'd worked with at Carson Newman named Mark Heinrich. And Mark was the president of Shelton State Community College in Tuscaloosa, and I'd done some consulting for them. So I went down to Shelton State and was exposed to community college life. And my wife will tell you that I absolutely loved it. And there's a specific story that I always share with people about the moment that I realized this is where I was supposed to be. And it dealt with meeting a student and hearing about that student's story and connecting it to my own personal story and my family. And so I realized at that point that I was in the line of work I needed to be in. And in Alabama, the community college system is a little different. So it's centrally controlled, not locally controlled. So it's centrally controlled by a chancellor, and the chancellor decided that he wanted me to be the interim president at Bevel State. So I always tell people my paycheck always came from Shelton. But for a 9-month period, I served as the interim president at Bevel State before I came to East Mississippi as president in 2015. And so 3 years, now I'm here. And so the last few weeks have been exciting for me, there's no doubt. They've been a little like not predicted. What you're mapping out your life. You don't map it out the way it has been the last few weeks. But I was approached by members of the board, chair of the board of trustees here at Meridian. I didn't submit an application initially for this position. Why? Well, I was happy in the job I had, and I enjoyed it. In fact, I had a really positive relationship with my board of trustees. In fact, the chair of my board has been very supportive of me, and he's written a letter on my behalf, and other board members have communicated. And Carol, I think, where are you? You called and you asked me a question. You said, did you resign before or after this opportunity? And I said, what? It was after, because I had a very positive relationship with my board. And when this opportunity presented itself and became public, things went crazy for me. And so after conversations with a number of people, you know what I decided? I told Mindy, I said, you know what, I'm going to just step out of the way and I'm going to let the EMCC do what it needs to do, and I'm going to focus my efforts on this opportunity. I'm going to step out in faith and do that. And my board was very resistant to the idea of me resigning. And I've had very many positive conversations with a lot of those board members about this, and they've wished me well. I've gotten text messages and blessings and prayer support from many of them, and it's been encouraging. But I was stepping out on faith because you may or may not know, but my wife works here in Meridian every day. My kids go to school here in Meridian every day. I drove to Meridian and back twice yesterday from school. And we decided, you know, after thinking through this and praying through this opportunity, we said, you know what, it's the place really we should be. We need to go into this with the mindset that this is where we want to be and what we want to do. And I know that seems weird and awkward to some folks, but I promise you, we do weird and awkward things. Sometimes all of us do, don't we, honey? And it was just, from my perspective, what we felt like was the right thing for us to do as a family, because I'm excited about the opportunity to work with a community, one community, to be at a place where it's an excellent institution where the focus is around this county and this community. And I know a lot of folks here because of my work at EMCC, and I've built positive, I think, relationships with a number of people, whether it be political folk, industry people, community leaders, and I could not be more excited about the possibility of being able to partner on a day-to-day basis in a really, really unique way to help make a true difference in this part of Mississippi. And I think if you live in Mississippi, then you know that we need innovative, creative leadership, thoughts, ideas. We need to be unified, moving forward in some positive ways. We need fresh thinking. We can't keep doing the same old, expect something different, can we? So the thought that I could be part of that in this community was really exciting. And so for me, as tough as it has been and tough as it might be, depending on how this goes, it's still worth it for me to take that risk, to make this decision, to do what I think is the right thing for our family. So there you go. Now you got questions, right? Good.
Okay, we're going to start like we've done in the past, and for those who have questions, Sarai has the microphone, and stand and say your question, and Dr. Huebner will respond to that, and then when we finish with that, I will read the questions that have been sent to me before now.
Thank you for being here, Meridian. Would you please address your views on early childhood education and any opportunities or projects that you have supported in the past? And early childhood education would be like birth to 5. Thank you.
So early childhood education projects that I've supported in the past, or just?
What are your views on early childhood education, birth to 5? And please elaborate on any projects or projects you have supported in the past.
Sure, absolutely.
Sarai,
I can speak loudly, I'm good.
Do we have another mic?
This is great, this is fine. I can shout whatever I need to do. No, early childhood education. Well, conceptually, it's fundamentally important. I mean, there's a lot of research, a dearth of research that talks about how that learning process that starts in the home before a student even enters kindergarten, the things that happen within the family is fundamentally important to the trajectory and the future of that child. You know, I'm certainly no expert in this area, but I know there's a lot of research that suggests that if a student is not doing certain things by a certain age, that they're not going to be able to do other things when they get older, reading, for example. Correlations between crawling and reading and the way, you know, your brain works and everything. So I think early child education is fundamentally important. Now I want to distinguish it this way. I think early childhood education is distinct from, say, daycare, right? So I've been fully supportive of efforts at multiple institutions to provide opportunities for you know, early learning opportunities, not just daycare. So it should be within the environment that is challenging to the child, age appropriate challenging. that's exposing the children to the things they need to. Now, in terms of projects I've supported in the past, you know, the state has, MCCB has the early childhood, I'm embarrassed, I can't think of what it's called, Academy, right? And so we've certainly jumped in with 2 feet. We jumped in with 2 feet at EMCC, of course, at our Golden Triangle campus for that. Now, we have some visions at the Scuba campus and also at the Golden Triangle campus of creating some early childhood education opportunities, because we have resources, knowledge, personnel that we thought would be instrumental in particularly a lower socioeconomic climate that would help create opportunities for families that would make them more school ready at that age. So I walked by your classrooms, by the way, just a little bit ago. They're impressive and made me want to go in and play with blocks. But it's that sort of thing that I think is part of the mission from, you know, cradle to the grave of community college. And so appreciate what you do.
Other questions on this side?
You need a mic. I'm pretty loud. Good afternoon.
Impressive.
You touched on this a little bit, but could you please elaborate specifically about what appeals to you about MCC and why you're seeking the position at present? Sure.
Well, for one thing, and I did elaborate on it, you know, for me, on the personal level, you know, being part of a community that where my kids are in school, where my wife works, where, you know, my wife grew up in Wayne County, and she would come to Meridian. That's when you go to town to go to the malls from where she grew up, this is where she would come. So it's a place where she, you know, we've as a family have had a strong comfort level for many, many years coming back. So we feel like we are comfortable in Meridian, know Meridian, so that's attractive, one. Secondly, and I touched upon this a little bit ago, look, in the topic of economic development, for example, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there. And if a community can have all the important parts functioning and working together in a grand way, I think that there's so much more that can be accomplished. So the thought that I will be serving one community rather than 6 is very, very enticing to me. And the fact that I get to help serve in a capacity with an institution that is I mean, to say that my level of impressed is an understatement. I mean, I know that everybody, when you work at an institution, sometimes you end up kind of getting, you know, blind to the wonderful positive things that are happening at your school, and you end up thinking to yourself, well, you know, this is terrible, or this is bad, or we need better here, and maybe you do, maybe you don't. But from an outsider's view, coming in and looking at some things, I think to myself, how fantastic is this? I mean, your retention rates are unparalleled. Your outstanding instructors, the student support. I got a chance to walk through the nursing simulation lab. Holy smokes! I mean, if you haven't seen it, you need to go see it. I mean, and you also need to know that you're not going to find that. Virtually anywhere else. I mean, that is the kind of stuff you build on. That when you're talking about a quality institution with a vision for expanding and a vision for growing and doing some other thing. I got a list of opportunities I want to explore, boom, right away. Within a community that seems to be mobilizing around a common vision about growing and working and making a difference, and it coincides with personal opportunity. I mean, it's a no-brainer for me. So, yeah, really excited about the possibility of being at Meridian Community College.
Other questions?
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Ed. What are your views, thanks for being here first.
Thank you.
What are your views on how best to do workforce development in a community like ours?
Right. Well, and I would say the best way to do workforce development in a community like this one is not going to be that different than being excellent at any kind of program. I mean, there are needs that have to be assessed, identified, recognized, conversations that have to be had, relationships that have to be built, a unified approach where, you know, I always say conceptually there is a table and you need to be at the table. And those conversations need to be taking place very proactively. And then working backward from that. So being there, listening, understanding what the needs are, and working back from that means that you assess where your resources are, you know, what you can do with what you got, what needs to be modified, where you might be able to find those dollars, or where you may be able to find the resources you need, and then looking at the volume, and I always say, I like the idea of looking for ways to say yes. That's what I always say. And let me give you just a real quick example. When I was at Shelton State Community College, look, y'all have to understand, I come from an egghead background, which means, you know, I was a PhD in communication studies. I was a professor, and I'm at you know, when I get to Shelton State, and then I get thrown in because I was good with math and good with some of the numbers and spreadsheets and curriculum, thrown in with the folks trying to work on the Mercedes project. So we're sitting there listening to them, and they're saying, we need this, 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 and this. And we're saying, okay, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. When they leave, we're like, we can do that, right? And so then it became a matter of, all right, we've made a commitment, so now we have to figure out how we're going to make that happen with the resources available to them and available to us. And so then we just begin to get very systematic about it. You know, setting timelines, checking back with them, engaging them on a regular basis. That program was unique. We had the folks who were managing that program for Mercedes. The students, this is going to be crazy, but they helped select the students who were part of that program, and they helped scholarship them. And then the students who were in that program allowed those folks to have access to their transcripts, their grades. They checked up on them every day. They gave them work every Friday. They got to work 9-10 hours a week. They became essentially transitioning employees from day one. And when they were done, they got job opportunities that blew, I mean, I don't even want to tell some of you, because if you could get a mechatronics job at Mercedes with overtime, it was paying over $120,000 a year for students who were 21, 22. And I can't tell you the number of employees that wanted to quit and go into that program. I mean, it was impressive. But it all started with looking for ways to say yes and systematically working back from there. It's the same way, though, with any program that you create. Being aware, listen, work your way backwards with the resources you have to figure out what you can do, instead of starting with the premise that this is not something we can do. And colleges, they do that a lot. Yeah, I don't know about EMCC. You know, I remember the CEO of Mercedes-Benz North America, his name was Marcus Schaefer, and he said one time, I was in a meeting with the governor and the president of the University of Alabama, Shelton State, 4 or 5 others. And he said, we go and work with universities, they think they know our work better than we do. They don't. Shelton State was willing to listen. That's the difference. So, I don't know if that helps, but it's a matter of engagement.
Good afternoon, Dr. Huebner.
Hey, Darren.
Again to Meridian. If you will, share your vision for workforce development as it relates to credit and non-credit training. And then if you'll tell us how you would market MCC to a company looking to relocate to you.
Okay. Credit, non-credit. Of course, you know, if you're looking at multiple sides of the funnel, you're talking about credit, obviously credit and non-credit. Within the non-credit realm, there are a couple of different ways you can do it, right? So you have the general population of people that wants to learn how to do whatever, you know, welding or whatever, and they don't want the credit, but they're looking for a certificate or something of that nature. So they're coming to you looking for, and we can subdivide this 1,000 different ways, but they're looking for that. So having those opportunities for a person who wants that, but they're not interested in the credit side, okay? And then within that realm, there's also customizable training. So for example, if you're working with a company that has a specific need for, I'm just going to say something like aluminum welding, right? So you're looking for a company that needs that, and you know that you can't do an entire credit program around the needs of that one specific company. But you can, maybe there are a couple of ways. You can incorporate it into non-credit. If they commit to a number of students that you can help fund, you can do a customizable, like short-term or even a long-term training class for that particular company. Or in some cases, they're just a bunch of different options where those kinds of programs begin to intersect with each other. The really novel and creative schools are integrating credit and non-credit kind of programming within the career tech area. So then on a whole nother side of it is you think about what I call community development. And so one of the things that we do we've done well at East Miss is what we call our C2C programs. This is not the college, it's not that one. It's colleges, what do we call it? College to Career program. And we have a version of it in Kemper County called S2S, and that is unemployed, underemployed, ages 16 or 18 to 24. And so they come into the top of that, and then they do a series of assessments, and then they can go through a manufacturing basic skills class, and at the end of that they get an OSHA certification, they get like CPR certification, they might get a manufacturing basic skills certification. In addition to that, they'll have a career readiness certificate there. And so what that's doing then is cultivating and creating a mass of people that folks like Bill Hanna can use when he's going out in the recruiting industry. So that adds to the volume of numbers. So you asked me a simple question, but there are a bunch of things to unpack in all of that. But in terms of how we work with economic development, I mean, it really is a matter of being at the table, and it is a matter of providing resources. Now I'm going to say this, I'm going to be careful about saying it though, is that if you were to compare some of the resources available to folks like Bill, and I'm stepping out here, Bill, you're welcome to stand up and say you're wrong. But in terms of resources available from a state perspective, we're at a strategic disadvantage in Mississippi. But one of the things that I've always believed is that the community college can help be that, provide that data, that information, that those avenues for funding for training that are hard to identify at a level above this office or this area. So I think we can be a data provider in that way and be able to articulate that data in a way that's helpful when we're sitting at the table. I also think that, again, don't know the answer to this question, but folks who have been part of the development of the Workforce Center here, I bet it could provide incubator space, like say, for example, industry moves in, they need someplace, training space that can be dedicated to that company for X amount of time, perhaps for pay. Okay, that's a tool that folks like Bill Hanna, I'm guessing, can use when they're out trying to attract. They can say, look, we've got training space for you right here. We have a training provider right here, and they're very good at it. And this is how you can identify specific funding streams for what you need to do. Does that help? I gave you a real simple answer to a way longer question, but.
All right, you mentioned something about workforce. Do you see a community college's primary function to be workforce education, or instilling in them the desire and foundation to further their education for advanced degrees?
Yes. Yeah, the answer is both. I mean, we have to be fundamentally about recognizing the needs of our community, and workforce is not just jobs in manufacturing or jobs in healthcare or jobs in. They're also about advanced degrees. We need teachers, so we need to be thinking about how we can help cultivate and develop teachers. We need to be thinking about how we can cultivate and help develop people who are in the banking and finance industry, and we need to think, and those jobs require 4-year degrees. And look, I'll advocate for the liberal arts as much as anybody. I mean, I have a degree in communication. What do you do with that? You talk. So the answer to your question is yes, and we can't neglect one for the other because both of them help build and move a community in a positive direction. Oh, yes.
Afternoon, Tom.
Hey.
Should you get hired for this position, there are people here that probably will be working for you. There are people like us in the business community who will be working with you, and there are people here that you'll be accountable to get your job done. And you're the only candidate, as I understanding, that is currently a sitting president at a community college. So everybody that falls into that group, I think, would be interested in if we were to ask other people, how would you describe what your leadership style is for all of us, just in general?
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I'm high energy, by the way, if you haven't noticed. And that's the way I operate 24/7. I don't sleep a whole lot. I need to sleep more, but I don't. And so I'm thinking all the time. And so I'm that kind of a always thinking, always working kind of person. And so I love my work. I have a missionary spirit about it, about what we do, because it really is life-changing. And so from a management style, I would say that I really work to empower people. And so if, for example, if people feel like they can't do something without my consent, that just like, eventually I might say, why do I need you if I have to keep telling you what to do about every job you do? So I try to lay out a strong vision, and I try to take that vision and help each one of my people who are in my support network or in my structure. I try to communicate that vision to the folks I'm accountable to and work with, and I try to communicate that vision to the people who are within my report. And then I have expectations that, sometimes very, very specific goals. And there are some areas in my experience where I've worked to make very, very specific and strategic changes to how we operate. And so I'm not going to manage that, but I'm going to ask that it be done. And then I'm going to ask that you treat people well, treat people decently. Don't, run over somebody just because, I used to get mad when people said, well, the president said. Well, the president said, or you're the president. Well, what does that mean? Does it give me permission to be a big dope? Or does that give me permission to be hostile? Or does it give you permission to make some bad decision that you don't want to be accountable for? That you're going to blame on the president somehow? So there's an art form to having an expectation of people being successful and people doing what you've empowered them to do. And so I think every organization works to try to understand the vision of the leader, and the leader should be working to communicate that vision and then making decisions within your day-to-day operation that you believe support the vision of the leader. And so,
what about with the community, Tom?
Yeah, same kind of thing, really. It's about articulating what you do and how you do it and what's important and why the institution is important. I think that folks would recognize that in the last few years, there's been an elevated presence of the institution where I've been in the community, and that's been very deliberate. And that's been because we have strategically decided that we're going to tell people our story. We're going to tell people what we do. And we're going to we've rebranded, we've developed very, very specific marketing plans to help tell our story in our communities. We've built really good relationships with media personnel, and that makes it a whole lot easier, when our story becomes part of the community story. And so, but listening, same things, listening, building positive trust relationships with people in the community is a no-brainer and a difference maker. And I enjoy being out and about. I enjoy within the institution talking to people, listening, within the community talking to people and listening, and then coming back and developing the plans, processes for us to move forward.
Dr. Huebner, good afternoon.
Where are you?
Right here.
Oh.
Right in front of you.
Hi.
My name is Jean Willis, and I'm retired faculty in adult education and workforce development.
Yes.
You've talked a lot about programs. I'd like to switch channels and talk a little bit about people.
Okay.
I do not believe that great presidents make great colleges. I believe that great colleges make great presidents. This is an excellent institution. I know because I worked here for 28 years. And it's due primarily to the people you see seated in front of you today. Were it not so, they wouldn't be here. They care. They care about who their leader is. We also have today, I've recognized many community people in the audience. They care about this community college, and they've been very supportive. No one is more dedicated, however, than this faculty and staff. I've heard other candidates speak about programs for leadership development. Speaking as a faculty person myself, that's not always easy for everyone to participate in because of life circumstances, financial issues, scheduling problems, children's activities, whatever the case may be. My question to you is, what would you do on a daily basis to let each and every one of these dedicated faculty and staff members know that they are valued and appreciated by you?
Oh man, that's a very good question. And your premise that you started with is fundamentally, I mean, it's absolutely correct. I mean, institutions are only as strong as the people who are in them every day, and the people on the front lines in the institutions. And so, you know, a president gets the privilege of helping sometimes to be the face, or helping sometimes to articulate a vision or carry a message. But look, when students walk in the doors, they usually don't even know who I am. They don't know who the president is, but they know who the English teacher is. They know who their math instructor is. They know who the person at the business office is who helped them figure out how to pay this bill, or the person in financial aid, or the admissions person that cut them a little slack and helped them do what they needed to do, right? And so you know, when I talked about wanting to go back to the classroom, and I went back to the classroom for a few years when I was first administrator, it was that I'm talking about. It was that kind of opportunity to have that kind of influence that I longed for when I went into administration the first time. And so yes, that's right. A college is as good, is no better than the people that it has who walk into the doors every day and work on behalf of the college. That's absolutely true. But in terms of helping to appreciate them, I think there are a couple of things. I think that if an institution recognizes that a president is working on their behalf, fighting for them in the ways that he or she can to help make a better working environment for them, look for opportunities to raise wages or to make sense of something that doesn't seem to make sense in some possible way, I think that shows them appreciation. And I've used this phrase before, and if I get this opportunity to serve, you'll hear me say it again. I don't believe in the president as the king. I believe in the president as the quarterback, meaning I'm in the game too, and I'm working on your behalf, and we're working, leading this thing together. I'm not the person that, you know, I'm here, I'm the king, and you're serving me. That's not. If I ever get to be the king, then I don't need to be ever in this kind of leadership role. That's not the way I view it. So being in the trenches with people, talking to folks, walking the halls, listening to what they have to say shows appreciation. Having a vision of the institution that includes an understanding of what their role is, I think helps show appreciation. And then the other thing is just basic. It's like letting people know what's going on is a way of showing appreciation. And honoring them in that process and including them in that process is important. I mean, you know, everybody's like, well, you know, they are making this, or they are doing this, or they are whatever. And sometimes I'll say, no, it's we. You know, we part of all of this. We're together. And so I think that mindset is fundamentally important. Recognizing people, getting to know people, crying with people when they need that, hugging people when they need that, whatever. I'm not hugging people, whatever I'm saying. But I'm saying, you know, being there for people.
Dr. Huebner?
Yes.
It's
Hi.
great to see you here today, and thanks for the opportunity to join in your dialogue. My name is Angela Payne. I'm the Director of Admissions here. And my question is, actually I have two if you don't mind.
Sure.
The first one is, apart from the obvious advantages of leading from a sister institution that shares our recruitment district, what compelling position do you present today that sets you apart from any other finalists we have seen?
Okay, well, I think the one you mentioned is pretty important, right? Even though you said it has to be aside from that, so.
It's kind of obvious.
Right. So, but you know, that is beneficial. But second, I would say, you know, obviously having the experience, having sat in the chair, having made the decisions, having to make the hard decisions, understanding how the process works on a state level, and having navigated that process. And okay, I have to say it this way too. I didn't just you know, on July 1st, 2015, it's amazing how much people just assume you already know because, well, you're the president. I'm like, oh man, I had to learn it. how the state system works, how those processes work, how the reports to, Raul work, and the audits and all that sort of thing. And so having gone through that and understanding that system in which we live is something that I think, trust me, there's a learning curve there. And having been through that, building the relationships also, I think have been very positive. And that would be not only with political folks, political leaders, community leaders, business leaders, industry leaders. I think having that advantage. Being familiar with Meridian because my kids are in school, my wife's here. But I think the most important thing is, as I've said before, is having sat in the chair, having made the hard decisions, having been there, done that, understanding the way when you're making a tough budget decision, what you have to be thinking about when you do that. And I know you know this, but Mississippi in higher education has not been good at community colleges in the last few years. Has not been. Okay, and I know that you all know that last year the budget cut was devastating. Devastating. They tried to make up for it a little bit this year, and we're grateful they did. But they don't only need to make up for it, they need to surpass it, But being in those trenches, having fought those battles and understanding where they're coming from and having the trust relationships with people so that I can walk into the office of the House Chair of Appropriations or Ways and Means or whatever and say, hey, John, or Jeff, so can we talk about this or whatever? I think it gives me a strategic advantage.
Thank you. All right, question 2. What would be your first official act as CEO at Meridian Community College?
First official act. Well, I can tell you, I don't know. I mean, it depends on kind of what's going on. But one of the things that I would do immediately is to begin a very, very aggressive process of listening to people, talking to departments, going to groups of faculty, and I know some of the faculty may be 9 months and not there in July 1, but beginning that process of listening and recording and understanding and not just meeting. And I've done this before, and I always had 2 questions: what's working, what's not? And start with that. It's amazing what people will tell you, because there are things that work, and there are things that don't. and building, and it also establishes that trust relationship. At the same time I'm doing that internally, I would start doing that externally as well. So that's where I get the chance to understand the folks within the institution and also understand the folks in the community we serve. And so I don't know if you call that the first official act, past, hey, thanks for the opportunity email or something, but it would be, that would be a right out of the gate, very, very important thing for me to do is get my feet on the ground and start listening and understanding the dynamic here.
Dr. Huebner, how are you doing today?
I'm well.
I just wanted to ask you one question.
Sure.
You've had great success at other places you've been, including Scuba, and we're all excited you're part of this process and that sort of thing. But I wanted to ask you, as the mayor of the city of Meridian, if given this opportunity to serve as the president, as you see some of our strengths and weaknesses and opportunities, you do have an advantage, I would say, because you already are part of the fabric of this community, being part of it already, and also the fact that you serve or have served for the last few years at one of our sister institutions in the state of Mississippi. When you look at the strengths and the weaknesses and some of the opportunities that we have, and the piece of the puzzle that the president of MCC will be in that, what gives you say that Dr. Huebner should be this person to lead MCC, and talk to us about some of those things that you see right now as some of the things that we can move forward to help this community and also help this institution in moving forward.
Well, good, thank you. You know, I think some of the challenges facing everyone in higher education, particularly in community college education nationally, and certainly within the state of Mississippi, would be declining enrollments and declining appropriations, okay? And enrollments, as you know, are going to be tied to two different things always, and you can check me out historically. It's going to be tied to your population. It's going to be tied to your unemployment rate. So in some ways, you know, when there's a low unemployment rate, that's good for the community, but it's bad for the local community college because people aren't going back to retrain, and they're not, you know, and when people have good jobs, guess what? They send their kids to four-year school. They tend to do that. But I think there's some unique opportunities here that I'm excited about exploring. And one of them would be a continuation or a growth of partnership possibilities, opportunities with the folks across the road, MSU Meridian. I know there are some pieces in place already that can help create a seamless transition, or the possibility of a seamless transition between the two institutions. And I know there are hundreds of students, I believe, that have taken advantage of that currently in that financial aid consortium, which I think is fundamentally important. And I'm pointing to the bald guy over here, Dr. Terry, that was Dr. Terry Del Cruz, is the MSU Meridian director. But I think continuing that conversation and thinking about how we can do even more in building that partnership, I think is fundamentally important. And I think also the thought process about how, are there some things that we can do that are like low-hanging fruit? I don't know if the C2C program or the S2S program, like I described, I don't know how it would, I wasn't able to identify on the website whether there's a program like that. Hey, Bob, there was a program like that. But that kind of thing can really filter out and begin to give people a hope in the community on what their next steps might be within the realm of higher education. That's easy stuff. And there are grant opportunities we can use to help support those opportunities. And I would also say that we should be very forward-thinking about programs. And there are some no-brainers. There's things in the area of aviation, logistics. We can, are there additional health kinds of related programs? I don't know, I'm just throwing this out. Occupational therapy was one that I think we had chit-chatted with someone about this morning. There are just some, anything in drone technology, you know, the market is there for that. Automotive, didn't realize there wasn't an automotive here. Diesel, you know, stuff that helps feed the local community. I think those are some easy things that we can consider. Again, here I am standing here like everybody can just say, you know, it's easy from you know, behind the microphone up there without knowing what the data show. But we have to begin that kind of process of looking at what we can do. And I can tell you what the marketplace expects in those areas, and anything we can do within that realm to help, you know, the work readiness of our community helps in economic development. Is that,
Dr. Huebner,
yes.
That's a two-part question, but one,
Thank you.
obviously you're very familiar with the fact that EMCC is a one-county district consisting of Lauderdale County, but other colleges can have a presence in this district. How do you plan to cooperate with other area colleges and still maintain a strong hold on our own district?
Right. So part of it is recognizing what you do and what you do well, and part of it's recognizing, for example, and I've said this to people in the past. You know, people put EMCC versus MCC, and when they think in Meridian about EMCC, they think about scuba. Well, but scuba is a different. It's residential. Primarily, there are some career tech programs, but very few primarily transfer-oriented programs. And so, you know, understanding when I use the word space, I don't mean real estate. I'm talking about intellectual space that you own and that you're good at and be really good at it. Figure out the programs that are best suited for your institution and the ones you should absolutely do. And if there's one that's not, you know, best within your realm, you know, it's okay to let someone else have that ownership. But it really goes back to owning what you do and owning it well. So that means that start with the assumption that you're going to recruit every person who lives in Lauderdale County ought to come to school here. Yeah. Start with that assumption, right? I know that sounds crazy, but start with there and then figure out the plan to make that happen. Don't worry about someone else. Worry about what you do and make that what it needs to be from a recruiting standpoint. And then where there are areas of cooperation and possibility, know what ground is okay to, in that give and take to give, and what ground is not okay to give and take and give. Because, you know, it's really in 2018 a false model to assume that you should be restricted by real estate. And what I mean by, I know what the statutes say, I know all that. But what I'm talking about is becoming premier. Like, for example, in health-related programs at Meridian Community College, why would you go somewhere else? I mean, this is where you would go. This is the best place to go. So that, and the student enrollment in those programs is not just Lauderdale County. It's from all over. People come from all over because they want to be part of the excellent programs that are in that realm, for example. So it really becomes about confidence in what you own and who you are and what you do. Look, a student can sit at their house in Meridian and go to schools all over the world. So fighting about turf is not particularly helpful in 2018. What's more important is being excellent at everything you do in the way you need to so that you can become the college of choice for people. So,
kind of a second part, a little bit anyway. You mentioned something about being a quarterback and a little bit of sports analogy.
Oh boy.
And I just happen to think that as currently still serving as president, and quarterbacks like to have their own team, would you be inclined to bring some of your team from over there to here?
I don't know what team members are we have here, what ones we have there. I don't know. I mean, I start with a fresh set of eyes when I come in and value the people and think about what the needs are here versus what we have and everything. I don't have any predisposition that I would do, that necessarily. I mean, there might be some folks over time that would be interested or might not be. I don't know. But the answer to your question is, every leader always, kind of thinks through all the people, their needs, and the folks that can be a good asset for it. My inclination has always been to help develop or pick people from the inside who look, but sometimes you need somebody from the outside to help see a fresh perspective on something. It just really kind of depends. So the answer to the question is, if it's appropriate that I bring somebody from my past life at EMCC or Shelton State over, I would do it. But if it looks like there's somebody within internally that I think is ready for whatever that is, then I'll go that direction too and not even blink. So yeah, there's not a mindset, a disposition that says, yeah, we're going to do this or going to do that. It really
I was just thinking, how coaches do all the time. That's why.
Yeah.
Change the subject.
Yeah.
Because I haven't heard anybody mention it. I don't know why I'm the one that asked this question. But how, we talked about enrollment and all that.
Right.
You know yourself, one of our biggest challenges is retention. What have you done to increase and maintain retention of students?
Yeah, it's a challenge for everyone. And one of the things that we did, we aggressively worked towards some efforts at EMCC that are in their second year of implementation and that were designed specifically. We were one of 4 schools in the United States that received support from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for Inside Track, which was a program of student advising. And so I've been a proponent of a different, so everybody talks about community college and the issue of access. Access is fundamentally important. Every community college should always be focused on access, but we should now be focused on something more than access, and that is engagement. Because just having the doors open doesn't mean people are going to come through them. Just because you have and I've heard folks at institutions for a long time say something like this, well, I'm here, they just never come see me. Okay, well, at that point, you should be going to find them, right? And so the kind of the sexy word that everyone uses is intrusive advising, okay? And that model has a lot of research to support it. Well, at EMCC, we begin this process through Inside Track of developing a very, very coaching model. We call it personal coaching with advisors and students, and so that there's a very aggressive kind of an idea that we're not going to let you slip through the cracks, okay? Because we have high-risk students, all of us do, if you are at a community college in the United States of America, you're going to be serving students in general who are high risk. And so the kind of attention that those students need, and that's not even a correlation to ACT, for example, or any of those characteristics, but we have to have a system that doesn't allow, we're engaging students in such a way that doesn't allow them to slip through the cracks. And so from a retention perspective, we begin a process of requiring orientation from all of our students. We built personal relationships at the orientation process. So you're meeting your advisor, and then we developed a caseload approach where student advisors these were your students, and you are responsible for checking up on them X number of times. And so all of that stuff was all designed around helping to improve retention rates. It's particularly challenging with first generation students. I did something very similar. We used the navigator concept, which I know in workforce, navigator concept, you understand, but we used the navigator concept at Shelton State. We created a student success center we called our SOAR Institute. Ironically, a Meridian Community College graduate was our person who started that, and I think her sister is in the room today, right? And it was one of the best things we ever did. Tell her I gave her a shout out. Annette Cook is her name, and it was really this very intensive process of helping to identify what a student needs so that student can be retained and graduate. And we were conceptually moving that same direction at EMCC. And one other thing we did that is a minor thing, we made it impossible for a student to withdraw from school without talking to somebody first. And the retention numbers were like, I mean, it went through the roof. It was crazy because we were solving student problems before they became a problem just by conversation, but forcing a conversation with someone. Instead of using technology to make it easy to quit, we use technology so that it forces you into a conversation at the appropriate time to help solve sometimes simple problems that people are too embarrassed to ask about.
Questions?
Y'all know I got more.
Ask them, go.
I've got more too. Any
Here.
other questions?
Dr. Huebner,
Yes.
would you discuss, when I think about the success of the Golden Triangle, would you discuss their infrastructure or that areas versus ours and our population within the Meridian region versus the Golden Triangle?
Yeah, I mean, that is a whole different mindset, and it's very regional in its approach. So, for example, you have Lowndes County, Clay County, Oktibbeha County. And even then, though, you know, there are economic development kind of authorities within different parts of the county, but they began a number of years ago operating in concert with each other. And so, and that's certainly because they're kind of viewing themselves as one big location and area. I think there's some similar efforts taking place, but not quite structurally the same, but some similar kinds of efforts taking place here within the framework of the Alliance for Growth and EMBDC, and some efforts there from local economic development directors that are really, I think, from where I sit, looking to working very hard to be on the same page as they're moving forward and thinking more globally about the work that they're doing. And so, you know, when you've got that kind of three-county support for effort, it really mobilizes in a kind of a different way. But it also creates challenges too, you know. So one of the things that I'm excited about is being able to work with one county in this nature, and so that we can all, you know, have all those pieces moving forward. You know, and we can talk about the story of the Golden Triangle, you know, another day, but, you know, things have to happen in the right way and the right time for something to begin to mobilize and take off. And EMCC was fundamentally a part of that, of that takeoff, you know, 10 or 12 years ago. But regardless, though, for it to work, all the pieces have to be there, and they have to be willing to work together. That's important. If they're not, they're not willing, and they're not willing to work. If they're not there, they're not willing to work together, then it doesn't matter, you know. So there has to be a trust relationship between economic development in the college, between county government and city government, between the college and county, college and city, and all those things have to have a strong trust level as they work together, and industry at the same time. And they often want it. They have to want to move forward. And then they have to be lucky sometimes. The right opportunity has to land. And when one lands, another one can land. I mean, it's in some ways a science, in some ways an art, in some ways it's wake up and see what happens today. So,
Dr. Huebner, coming from an area that does talk about athletics, and y'all have a pretty good program over there, do you believe that a winning athletic culture and tradition should be expected and used as an asset in recruiting students?
well, I think it can be an asset to recruit students. I would say that the expectation is, if you're placing an expectation, if your primary expectation is winning, then you're missing a big boat there. I think it should be creating students who are excellent, students who have opportunities. I think it should be holding them to high standards. I think it should be lots of things. Your students need to graduate. They need to be able to, whatever they're going to do. If they want to go to a four-year institution, you should be preparing them to go to that four-year institution. And you should be building within those student athletes strong character. You should have that mindset in all kinds of programs at a college. You can have that mindset in your theater program, in your music program. You will, but with the whole idea of winning is, you know, it's easier to determine what winning looks like within the realm of athletics because there are winners and there are losers, right? But I think excellence, though. Okay, I wasn't much of an athlete. You just need to know. I was on the debate team, so that means I could argue with people. So. But what I want to say about that is that I had, my mentor was Dr. Bob Derryberry, that's really his name, and he was a wonderful man and my mentor until he passed away in 2009, I think. I got life advice from Dr. D in 3 weeks from 3 weeks before he passed away, and he was like a second father to me. And Dr. D said, he used to tell us, he said, don't worry about them, worry about yourself. And he would hold us to high standards. And so when you do winning, he would say winning will take care of itself. And I think that's probably true. It's not true just in sports, but it's true in everything we do, is create high expectations, work hard to reach them, and then you'll be okay. But within the realm of athletics, that's certainly true. I think it's important to recruit students whose families like to come watch them play. I know that's an issue that presidents talk about and discuss, and I think is worthy of conversation on a statewide level. Because you're not just creating alumni, you're creating graduates who are going to have a vested interest in your success because they're from here. So, you know, I haven't looked at the rosters of our athletic programs. If there's a coach in here, I don't know, I'm sorry. I may have just made you angry, but I just think that kind of thing is important, is helping to figure out ways to build up your community. But, you know, athletics also gives opportunities for sharing your message, communicating the world. You know, when the EMCC baseball team did so well this year, and even though they lost to LSU Eunice, people across the state were talking about EMCC baseball. I know they were, because I heard them talk about it. It's good. That's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Any other questions?
I have a touchy question.
A touchy question?
Touchy question.
Oh, my word.
I don't need microphone. You yourself said that you didn't go through the same process that some of the other candidates went through. I believe you said you were approached.
Yeah.
You talked a lot about trust. How can you reassure us that the trust factor has not been compromised in the process? You understand
Great question. No, it's a good question.
Okay.
And I'll tell you this. I can't really answer the question. The reason I didn't.
I can ask that and not get fired.
Yeah, because you're retired. I mean, come on, really? I was like, okay, I know when you said touchy, I thought she's retired. She can be as touchy as she wants to be. And they told me to stand on this side, so I wouldn't walk over there if I could. But anyway, well, part of me wants to say, I'm not sure why you think that is a compromise of trust. That's one response. And the second thing I would say is that, a board of trustees at an institution is looking for the best president they can find, period. That's what they do. That's their goal. I suspect their charter is not any different than any other charter, and that is they can hire and fire the president. That's what they do. And they approve the budget and approve faculty or whatever. But one primary job is hiring and firing the president, keeping the president accountable. So the board does that, and so I can tell you that I didn't have secret feelers out. I'm pointing to my wife because she'd tell you if I'm making this up, and I'm not. I didn't have secret feelers out to figure out, hey, but there was strong community support for my participation in this, and I can tell you the reason I think. You'll have to ask members of the community, but I can tell you the reason I think there was strong community support for my participation, and that is because since the day I got to East Mississippi Community College, I worked hard to develop positive relationships with the communities we served at EMCC. I didn't do that because I was like, I'll show EMCC. I didn't come from the Mississippi Community College system, so I wasn't even aware that there was levels of between. I'm just doing my job. I'm trying to do my job well, and that meant building positive relationships with the people in the communities I serve, including Lauderdale County. So I had a lot of people approach me and ask me about why I didn't apply, and my response was, well, I got a job and I enjoy it. It's a good job, and I'm happy in my job. So when I was approached by the board chair, my initial reaction was, I don't know. I'm really, and then we had some conversations, and the promise has never been you're going to be the president here. The board they can't do that because there's an announced process there. So the deal was always, we'd like for you to be in this process. That's always what the deal was. Now, people have asked me, is it a done deal? And I'm like, well, I sure wish it were. That'd be nice. Wouldn't that be great? But they'll all go to take a lie detector test, I promise you.
Well, thank you. I think it's a question a lot of people wanted to ask. But
well, ask it. And if you got any more you want to filter to the retired person, I'll answer whatever question she got. So.
All right, so we still got it.
Oh, here we go.
All right,
yes,
so
Dr. Payne.
2 questions again.
Yes.
Can you please outline your strategic vision for the institution? Describe how it is tied to the mission of the institution, and how would you address diversity and inclusion in the planning and execution of that mission?
Well,
of that strategy.
Right. So I want to tell you this. I want to say this. Any kind of strategic vision I could give you standing here today would just be based on my impressions of things that I know. But when you walk in the door, you learn things about the institution and whatever. But I can tell you an institution that is aggressively meeting the needs of our students, aggressively meeting the needs of our faculty and staff, aggressively meeting the needs of our community. So, and I think institutions should have mentors and role models that represent their students. So I think the diversity issue is very important. I think that without knowing anything about the diversity distribution or makeup of the institution, I can't say that it's probably like a lot of schools in Mississippi and other parts where we probably have some challenges associated with that. And we should make that a priority of some sort to begin to address that. I know that sometimes we talked about this in the meeting I had this morning where, salaries are always a challenge. And I can tell you this, I don't know what the salary scale looks like here, but I know at East Mississippi Community College, I struggled. I had folks that wanted to come over from Alabama and work at East Mississippi Community College, but we paid less and worked more. So that was difficult to do, And so you end up having you have to understand where your environment is. And so from a strategic standpoint, and I say this often, every decision we make, every budget decision we make, every personnel decision we make, every decision we make should have the student sitting right in the center of the room. Meaning, how will this impact the opportunity for the students we serve? And if we do that, we're going to be all right. And that includes a whole wealth of different things that are important. So,
Dr. Huebner, one other.
yes.
Consider
Are you
that-
retired too? You ask a lot of questions.
Not yet, but I may be. Right after this meeting, day here.
I'm joking.
Given that funding is a primary concern for not just MCC, but all of the community colleges, what are your feelings on consolidation of either schools or services within the community college system?
What are my feelings about it?
Right, do you think that would you think that's a good idea or a bad idea?
You're talking about consolidating
No, I know what it is.
colleges?
Consolidating campuses or services? That's come up, in
Campuses or services. Yeah, that's been a conversation probably for decades, probably in Mississippi, and I know there were efforts within the IHL 10 or 15 years ago. I don't remember now, but I think those become very difficult to pull off. And I'll say this too. I know there have been some efforts in the state of Alabama to do that. One was a successful effort, coastal Alabama, and one was not, central Alabama. I might have some opinions about why or what, and there are probably some cost savings in some ways from particularly administrative costs, infrastructure kinds of costs and that sort of thing. And at some point in the future, I think there'll have to be an evaluation of the best way to deliver higher education in the world, in the United States. There's some of those conversations happening now. I think Meridian Community College is well positioned to adapt. I think that. But in terms of a consolidation, I don't personally see that. I don't see that happening anytime soon, because in some ways, as much as it makes sense, you might argue that it makes sense. The challenge, though, is that you're asking a community to give up ownership over something it's always owned, that's always been a part of its community, and is believed to be designed to serve the needs of that community. The board structure is that way in our colleges. The boundaries are set up in that way in our colleges. We're built that way. So for that to change, I think would have to take a consent of the people who are operating the institutions. I think that's going to be tough. I would also say that it's probably politically would be very, very much of a difficult sort of thing to pull off. And I am not sure that it's a good idea to ask a community to give up ownership over something it's invested in, and that it is supported for the entirety of its existence. So you might think that at some level, look, community college education has got to be accessible to every Mississippi resident. We're on camera here, so I suppose I could say, they ought to consolidate those IHL schools, though, I'll tell you that. But anyway, my point is, they're good conversations, and they've been had for decades. I don't see us on the precipice of anything in that regard anytime soon.
Dr. Cruz, you had a
One
question.
more question.
Yes.
Back to the touchy question, because I can't define freedom. You mentioned the involvement in the community and encouraging you to apply. In your opinion, what role does the community play, and what way does their opinion count in this decision or in the daily operations of their community?
So he wants to know about what role the community plays in this decision, and in the daily operations of the institution. Again, I mean, the question is you phrase it in a yes/no kind of a way. It's this or this. And I think that every institution, every community college should be in touch with, receptive to, should be very concerned about whether or not it's meeting the needs of the community it serves. And you know that because of partnerships with local schools, partnerships with industry, partnerships with sister institutions, partnership with your elected officials. I think it's important to have that as in your mindset. I think it's important also, again, thinking about what the students need within the institution, I think, is the fundamentally most important. So I think, it's both and. I mean, it's important to have that kind of relationship so that you know whether or not you're moving in the right direction as an institution. I think that's why we're created. That's who we're created to serve. And so I think having mechanisms for those conversations is fundamentally important. And in terms of what role they have in this process, I have no idea. I can tell you that there are 5 people who will be voting on this, and they got to make what they believe is the best decision for Meridian Community College. And I suspect the community will trust the decision they make.
Other questions? Okay. And I will read some of the questions that were sent to me. Some of the ones that were sent to me really have already been spoken. I mean, you've already talked about that. What is your perspective on teamwork within a college atmosphere? Specifically, what is the importance of working together across departmental lines in both credit and non-credit training?
I talked a little bit about that. I think it's fundamentally important. Teamwork's really important too. I mean, teams make better decisions. Individuals make quicker decisions. So I think it's good to try to empower people to make good decisions. At the end of the day, of course, the buck stops with the person at the top. And then the whole idea of credit, non-credit, integrating those is, it's fundamentally important to be thinking that direction.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is your opinion of transparency regarding salaries, job titles, budgets, etc.? Transparency.
Right. There's probably a story behind that question. I would say, there always is, like when you get a question about that, but so I really don't know what MCC does with regards to that. And for example, one of the things I liked about the Alabama system was that there were salary scales that had kind of published criteria, and you could find out. In fact, you can go and look on the Alabama Community College website now, and you could look by position, but not by person, and find out what their salary is and that kind of thing. That is something that is not a bad thing, because there's some consistency, and you have to have operational consistency with the decisions you make about salaries and everything else. Otherwise, you're going to be in trouble. So. But in terms of transparency, I don't know, if that means, I mean, the work chart's published, titles I assume are published, and that's a good thing. It would be unusual for institutions to publish everyone's salary, but, and I'm not sure I would be excited about that, but internally you should have a standard of consistency so that if you had to, you'd be comfortable with what you put out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And here is the question that is similar. What is your feeling toward having a step and rank pay scale for all employees, which would allow for those with equal years of experience and degree levels to be paid equivalently?
Well, the concept is a great concept, and I did some math on that to see what it would be like if we had a step scale and a salary scale at EMCC, and we couldn't afford it, to be honest with you. It was going to be tough to be able to do that kind of thing. So I really can't say about where that would fall here. And I would say sometimes in general, a degree, attainment, credential, similar kind of jobs, you should again work on maintaining internal consistency with how you are paying at those positions. Again, don't know the story here, but that is a value that when you hire, I created a process at EMCC that we would know before I would approve a position. I needed to know where we were on the on our kind of internal scale and how much money we had with that. So it's important to not make decisions in a vacuum, but make them in concert with decisions you made previously.
Okay. What do you see as the biggest challenges, other than funding, to keeping MCC a viable and growing presence in Lauderdale County and the state of Mississippi?
Well, yeah, obviously funding. We've also talked about enrollment, and we've talked about population shifts and all that kind of thing, which I think are important. I know you know that Lauderdale County is down about 5% over the since 2010 census, we've got to figure out a way to reverse that trend somehow. Increase the tax base there. That's a challenge. I think level of preparedness of our students entering the doors is an increase. It's been a challenge for a long time. I know that the number of students who are part of who take a developmental course here is, somebody tell me, about 40%, somewhere in that neighborhood. And that's way lower than the national average. Usually about 2/3, 2 out of every 3 students who's going to a community college nationally is going to be underprepared. And so we have to, that continues to be a challenge. And look, everybody wants to point to the public school system and say this, or this, but they're dealing with challenges too. And so it just becomes this cyclical kind of issue. And so I think that's huge. And I think, what else? I think addressing some of the diversity needs, I think, is one of the challenges for community colleges and this one. And I think this evolving understanding of the role of the community college within the community as it relates to workforce and economic development is a challenge that community colleges got to step up to the table in a different way than we have in the past.
Okay. How involved in community activities should the president of MCC be?
I don't know what should be, but I know what I will be. My family, we're active in the church, and that's important. I'm like in Rotary, and I try to be the guy that, I like to speak, obviously, and so I like to do graduation speeches or speak to civic groups, and so I like to stay very engaged in the community, and I think that helps with recruiting. I think it also helps with reminding people who we are and what we do, so I think pretty involved, being at the table, as I've said that phrase before.
Do you think it would be a feasible enhancement to the Early Childhood Development Program, BEAP, to institute an MCC daycare as a part of their program?
Feasible? I don't know the answer to that. I think conceptually it's a good idea, but I have to look at the money and see what kind of opportunities might be available. I've been privileged to have my children be part of early childhood. What do we call it in Carson? The Early Childhood Development Center. Sorry, I put her on the spot, sorry. And Early Childhood Development Center, and my kids benefited from that in great ways because we talked about the importance of early childhood education. But again, there are issues of liability you got to think about, there are issues of cost, and so, I wouldn't be opposed to looking at a feasibility study to see what would be possible, yeah.
And you talked a little bit about this morning, but just going to try to put these two questions together because some of the things you said this morning, they seem to kind of blend together. What is your perception of adult basic education programs, which includes the GED and other high school equivalency tests? And also, share the factors of people or events that have been most influential in forming you into the person you are today.
Man, that's a loaded question. That's good. All right, so the story I told, and I started it earlier, and I was going to give it in the speech if I got this opportunity later, so you'll just have to endure. But, when I was at Shelton State, I had my first graduation, and we had an honors ceremony beforehand, and then afterwards, a few hours later, we had graduation. And there was a student who I reckon, she kind of caught my attention. She was tall and slender, very fair skin, dark hair, and she had a tattoo sleeve that was very colorful. Went up her left arm. And so graduation that day, and I remember she graduated with honors, like 3.9 something grade point average, and I thought, well, that's interesting. So graduation, my job was to stand at the top of the thing, so when the students stairs, when they walk up, I'd grab their hand, and I was secretly doing it so they wouldn't fall. If they fell, I would catch them, but I would say something nice when they walk across the stage. So anyway, long story short, so whatever she graduated. That night, I'm at the baseball field. I was on the board of Cottondale Baseball, and if you don't know, I am a baseball fanatic, like in an unhealthy way, really. My anniversary yesterday, my wife even referenced that she loves me more than I love baseball. So, but anyway, I love her more than I love baseball too, by the way. So anyway, I was at the ball field, and there was an area where you couldn't smoke. So I was walking, no, I don't smoke, but I was walking out to my truck, and I passed by the smokers area, and there, that woman that had graduated that day was standing right there in the smokers area. And I was like, so I stopped, and I thought, should I say something? Yeah. So I took off my hat, and I started walking towards her, and I said, hey, you graduated from Shelton State today. And she started crying immediately. She burst into tears immediately, and I'm like, I'm kind of frozen, deer in the headlights, like, what did I say? And then she goes, that's him. And her friend started crying too, and I'm thinking, what? I'm not him. I don't know what you're talking about, you know? And then she said, why are you crying? She goes, you don't know why we're crying, do you? I said, I have no idea, and I'm not sure that I want to know. And she said, do you remember what you said to her today? And I said, no, I don't. And I'm racing in my mind, what did I say? And she said, when you grabbed my hand, you said, we're so proud of you. We always knew you could do this. And she said, you have no idea what I've been through. You have no idea the life I've lived, the decisions I've made. And she begins to tell me about all these poor decisions she'd made in life that involved drugs and abuse and all kinds of bad decisions. And she said, I've got a little girl, and she's 10 years old, and she wrote me a letter. I want you to read it to you. I got it with me. I said, don't read it to me. She said, why? Because I'm at a baseball field. I can't start crying. I'm a coach. And so she said, no, you got to hear it. So anyway, long story short, she reads this letter, and I'm just like boo-hooing right there. And it's about, you know, her 10-year-old daughter being so proud of her. And she tells me the story about how, you know, she looked at her daughter one time, and she said to herself, if I don't do something different with my life, she's going to be just like me. And she goes, I don't want her to be just like me. I want her to be better. I want her to have opportunities that I never had. And she said, and she decided I was going to go, she said, I got to go to college. And she didn't know. She saw some things on TV or whatever. And so she goes down to that junior college down there, Shelton State. And she started taking class. She said, from the day I walked in the door till the day I left, everyone there believed in me. Everyone there all knew that I could be what I wanted to be. That I wasn't defined by my past. I wasn't defined by my past. So I was walking out to the car, and I'm thinking, man, this is awesome. I was struggling with like being there, why am I there, and everything. And I walked back home. I came home that night, and I just like reflected on that. And then when I woke up in the morning, I thought to myself, wow, this is incredible. I felt like I met my mom. Like, what? What are you talking about? This girl got her GED, you know. So I grew up, my parents met in Arkansas and Rogers, Arkansas. If you know anything about Walmart, that's the home office of Walmart. I mean, in Bentonville, Arkansas, but the first Walmart was there at Rogers. My mom worked at that Arkansas. She's a high school dropout. She's a teenage mother. She and my dad flipped a coin, decided to move to Kansas City, Missouri, where I grew up. And when she was 32, she decided she's going to get her high school diploma. And so all of a sudden, all this stuff in my life really kind of came full circle. And I started connecting these dots. And I remember I woke up the next morning and I thought to myself, this is why I'm here. This is what I was created to do, was to be in a school just like this, where I can help connect dots for people. Create opportunities for people that I wouldn't be able to create otherwise. Being at that 4-year university at $25,000 a pop. Loved it, but. And I would tell my friends from that university, I'd say, look, they'd say, hey, come on, when are you going to come back? When are you going to do this? And I'd say, no. You have believed your whole life that education can change people, haven't you? And I'd say to them, and they'd say, yeah. I said, brother, you need to be on the front line with me. You can do it to a kid up there with 27, 28, 30 ACT. Come on down with a kid that can't spell ACT. It's kind of funny, sorry. But anyway, so it was like I got that purpose. And she'll tell you, I remember thinking, and I remember going like, oh wow, yeah, this is what I was created to do. So yeah, adult basic ed, thumbs up. Community college, thumbs up.
All right, just 2 more questions. What are your thoughts about retirees returning to work on campus?
It depends on who they are, I suppose. Yeah, there we go. No, you know what? Here's the answer to that question. It really does get not on who they are, but it depends on the opportunity. Because a lot of times, you can, if there's a specific need on campus that can be met by somebody who's part-time, that's in a retired position, and that's not that's a good thing. It can be a good thing. Sometimes if you create an opportunity for somebody just because you like them, maybe that's not a good thing. There has to be a real need. And then the other thing I would say is, and again, I have no clue about what it's on. I am probably stepping into something, and not on purpose though. Creating a position you don't need for somebody is not probably a good idea. And also, if somebody comes back in a retired state and they're doing the same job they were as full-time, then why was it a full-time job, So that's always kind of a question that you ask. So you have to be responsible fiscally in those decisions, but I'm not philosophically opposed to it at all. It just kind of depends on the situation and on the position. So.
Okay, the last question has to do with budget. What is your proposal to streamline the budget and place more emphasis on the funding of true academics rather than sports and poor performing programs, which take more out of the budget than they put in?
Well, I mean, the budget process is one that I've used for multiple years and multiple times, and that is you see where you are, you set an expectation. Like, for example, we had to make a number of personnel cuts last year. Nobody wants to do that. And, and so the way we did it is the portion of the budget that is managed by this division, this vice president is, I don't know, personnel budget is like 40% or whatever. So 40% of the personnel cuts are going to come from you. 20% are going to come from you. That's kind of a starting point, but sometimes though you have to make other decisions that don't fit that percentage. And so what I've done in the past is, okay, what's the value? So I would actually look at metrics that are associated with what a program is producing, and then when you look at what it's producing, then you have to ask yourself, is it okay that we're losing money on this program? Because sometimes it is. For example, it might be that you do across the board 10% operations cut, okay? And then you might say to yourself, all right, I'm gonna let you control what that 10% looks like in your department or your division or whatever. Sometimes it might be you think to yourself, all right, one of the hardest decisions I ever made at EMCC was we decided that we were going to outsource our housekeeping. Now, don't anybody go freaking out about that. We want to outsource housekeeping. I mean, that's a tough decision to make. Maybe outsource here, I have no idea. But that was a very, very tough decision to make, but it was a substantial savings for the college. So we tried to make that as smooth for those people. We identified folks that we knew could retire, and we tried to be as humane as possible in that transition, but it was a substantial saving for the college. And so sometimes you make big decisions like that. You try to make them as humanely as possible. I can tell you this, I cut operations for every athletic program the same as I cut for everybody else. In some cases I cut more personnel. In some cases I cut the program. We cut golf. We had hired someone to start as already on board. We had already allocated the money, but we were starting soccer and cut soccer before it started. Fortunately, it worked out for that staff member, personnel, that individual. So you try to make wise decisions about where you believe the bottom line is going to be impacted and what you believe is part of your mission as well as the institution. So very thoughtful processes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions? Thank you so much for all of you coming. If you want to have a word with Dr. Huebner, I feel sure that he will be here and would be willing to talk with you. And once again, thank you all for coming.